Good afternoon. I'm DK Milsap with the Love, Life, and Live podcast show, live from Pilsen, Chicago. It's at Fresh Aire Network podcast studios. This is the DK Love, Life, and Live show. Hello, welcome. And today's topics will be systemic racism within the kidney dialysis unit. We'll be talking about that. We have a guest speaker, and we'll be talking about systemic racism. With all the things that have happened in 2020, from presidential elections to COVID-19, to police brutality, to unemployment, and other unfortunate things, the one thing that has come to fruition is systemic racism within the workplace. So we will have some opinions with our guests, and we will get their idea of what is systemic racism. Some of the results that he needs a kidney transplant. So he's currently looking for a kidney, and that just goes to show you COVID-19 has affected us in a lot of ways. And one of the ways it has affected us is our organs. So let's pray for Scarface and along anyone else that has gone through COVID-19 and have had kidney problems resulting from that. Also, reports say that if you are a kidney transplant recipient, before taking the COVID-19 vaccination, you might want to consider talking with your transplant nephrologist. Each case will be discussed individually based on maybe some allergies or some complications you may have. That's very important now. Everyone is trying to get you to take this COVID-19 vaccination. Kidney transplant patients, because of their immune deficiency, need to be very careful about taking any new medications until they can see some results from people taking it before. Also in the news, it's been reported in July of 2020 that black nephrologists and medical students have said that kidney race testing is very inaccurate and very dangerous. So they are, the National Kidney Foundation has put together a group to investigate this. It appears that when you are on a transplant list, there is kidneys, they're doing kidney based on your race if you receive a kidney or not. So just a word of news for you, that is something that's being looked into. Medical professionals say that race shouldn't be an important thing as far as getting a kidney transplant. In other news, we're going to have a guest from Silver Springs, Maryland. Mr. Greg Smith is going to be with us via phone to talk about systemic racism in the kidney dialysis post-transplant era. He will give his opinion as far as has he experienced any systematic racism or if he's not. This is a very hot topic nowadays because of all the race issues that have been presented to us in 2020, from George Floyd to other individuals that have been assaulted as a period of being based on race. So a lot of people want to know, do transplant patients or people on dialysis, do they feel they have systemic racism? He'll talk about perhaps his job. Did he feel it at his job, and does he feel it in him trying to obtain a kidney? And also in the end, we'll talk about some things regarding COVID-19, some things you should be aware of, some news that you might not know. So right now we're going to talk with Mr. Greg Smith from Silver Springs, Maryland. And we're going to have him on the phone, and we're going to get his opinion on systemic racism as far as his experience is concerned. Greg Smith, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Greg? Yes, okay. How you doing? Welcome to the show. I've got your picture on the screen here. We're talking about systemic racism within the renal care business. And I understand that you have some adamant thoughts about that. Maybe you could share your experiences and share some knowledge with our audience out here.
Let's look at it like this. There are prejudice, there are racist behavior that's extended to patients, and in most instances they don't even know. They're there to get some type of treatment that's what's on their mind and concern, but they're not going to examine the doctors or nurses or techs to see what that interaction is going to be one where there's racism and actual racism. Now, to do that, you have to understand what racism is and what prejudice is in order to make that call.
Okay.
So we know there could be some issues, biases for people of color, but the behavior is where we draw the line and say, okay, now this is a racist thing. Now, for me, all nurses, doctors, no, not all of them. But if you can't ask a question to your medical provider, i.e. the doctor, unless he wants to just get mad because you asked him a question, then yeah, you have issues. There's a lot of that in the medical field, and I think that is where the problem lies. And I myself, I'm fortunate I have a decent education, so when they talk to me, I'm talking to them based on my knowledge as well. And I have to let them know that sometimes, like, oh, just don't say just anything to me. I would rather you say, Mrs. Smith, this is what we see, this is what we're trying to do. No, I don't see that. What I hear is, take these pills, and that's it. No question me. And so, yes, in the renal, now think about it, in the renal centers, where you have to go get dialysis. Now, I understand, you might see 30 patients a day, but I still want to be treated as a human being when I go to that center. I don't want to have to sit there and see a tech who might have a bad day, and then they push their bad day on me, and I have no knowledge about that bad day.
Okay, is that happen often, or is that just occasional, or is that the norm of your dialysis care?
Well, when we talk about how often, again, you're pursuing a question about racism and with dialysis and transplant. I don't, and if I can, I'm going to say is not prevalent all day, every day. I'm just saying to you that it really do exist. And because it exists, then we need to be conscious of it. And we need to stop it when it occurs. And I'm saying to you that that's not happening. I go to the dialysis center, and I see people older than me, and they look shell-shocked when they on their way home. And I'm like, don't nobody need to be looking shell-shocked after they come out of dialysis. Now, it's taxing if you're doing hemo. It's taxing on the body, so I understand that part. I understand that actually look, this particle, really, that's what it is. Because, there's a lot of dead skin cells that are not being removed. So, yeah, but the thing, racism is not a thing. And if you think about the medical profession, you're only going to have a handful of people who actually exhibit that type of behavior. Not everybody, but there's, and I could give you some examples like the people who always, I think, reflect this behavior. It is East Indian, African, some white, but this rainbow. And I just think it's a cultural thing. And I will give you an example of that. I have a friend of mine who's in Atlanta. When she was going through the dialysis portions of her journey, she had a black transplant coordinator. Her doctor, nephrologist, was black. And her journey is easier than mine.
Why?
And that's because those people understood the culture and her sensibility as a black woman. They just knew how to handle it.
Understandable.
Whereas everybody I have on my team is white. And they always want to challenge something or don't want me to challenge them. That's most important. Whereas, especially around food, I think the biggest problem would be food. Our culture may have this type of diet, and it might not bode well if you're a dialysis patient. So, of course, you have to make some changes. You're going to have to make some changes. That's automatic. But what I realize is that I can have a little of whatever this restriction. I can't eat it like a full plate, Thanksgiving. No. I have to literally watch what else would I eat. Because I don't want to retain any fluid in my body. Because that's a whole different problem. So if you have a problem with food and you can't change, then you're gonna have problems.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Smith.
I can say some stuff I'm saying because I had a kidney transplant that lasted 34 years.
Okay.
And if I had a transplant that lasted 34 years, I took care of myself. I watched what I ate. I went to my appointments. I did everything I was supposed to do. And in February 2020, is when I had to go back on the island.
Okay.
I wasn't happy about it, but it was nothing I could do. I could say that I didn't waste any energy having a transplant. So imagine I had a transplant in my early 20s. Late 20 or 30. Then what did I do? I said, based on the fact that I'm going to have a new leaf on life, I wanted to change everything about myself. So I went back to school. I ended up with 3 degrees. I have bachelor's, master's, 2 masters actually. And I just wanted to support the idea that a transplant is a new leaf on life. And you can do a whole lot with yourself within. You can make so many things happen when you know that you're going to be alive for 20 years. I'm only saying that because they say a regular kidney lasts 15 years. So I had it by.
In your opinion, Mr. Smith, what are some things that we could collectively do to change the culture of that in the renal arena?
I think that's a difficult question, and I'm saying that because I think most of it is cultural, and these people need to, these doctors and techs, need to, or maybe have a class on black sensitivity.
Okay.
Maybe they should look at and examine that just because they know something, the person that they're talking to may not. And so, what we're looking at is a one-on-one, right? These are people one-on-one. This is not a group setting. This is not something that is not manageable. So, yeah, stop all the bias. Get that, remove that. Entertain yourself with opposite people from yourself so that you can understand the person who comes to your office and you have to interact with them. And so that's important. You have to interact with the patient. And if not, then the patient is going to feel that there's an issue. And once that line is drawn, the rest of the visits are going to be celebrated.
Okay. Very understandable, Mr. Smith, very understandable. Let me ask you this question. Based on your experience, what you just noted, are there any similarities with that as far as maybe your former workplace? Did you feel that way as far as in your workplace? Maybe that's why you feel that way now as far as...
You got to recognize that on your workplace, everything is clandestine. Nobody is actually coming at you a certain way. Now, I want to preface that by saying that people, it depends on the boss. Right? It really depends on who the manager is, the supervisor of the individual. Now, yes, I can say, for example, as a doctor and patient, that's different. Livelihood and life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Livelihood, you can do this or that. But when you're talking about your life with these doctors and nurses and techs, literally have your life in their hand.
Okay.
And if you take the time, most of the time they're gonna say, I don't know what's wrong with you. You know, I don't know. But in that same point, they'll say, take these 2 tablets and call me in the morning.
Without any explanation of what the tablets will do?
Not one. Take this. You'll be all right.
Now, my question would be, are these so-called professionals telling you this, are they seasoned professionals, or are they fellows or residents or medical students?
I don't think it matters. Hey, it doesn't matter. You making a point, but it really don't matter. If that person is seasoned or just came out of school, I think that they're taught to behave that way, and they just carry it out.
I see. Okay. I personally, from my experiences, think that a seasoned professional will have a better so-called bedside manner when he's talking to you, as opposed to a resident, because they've just been studying. They don't have that rapport with the common element, which is the person. So I do understand what you're saying regarding your experience, and that's probably very true. But my experience is a little different when you're dealing with someone new, and it depends on what facility you go to. If you're dealing with seasoned people or unseasoned, it makes a little bit of a difference on how they handle the bedside matter. Just as if you would go to a doctor and you didn't like that doctor because maybe he didn't tell you the right thing, but the way he approached you, his bedside manner, his voice, his tone, just didn't sit well with you. Which goes back to what you were saying, as far as a lot of people who are in that field don't understand the African American culture, where we might feel more comfortable talking to you about certain things if we were approached a certain way. So it's good that systemic racism has been brought out through all this tragic year, but we need to find a way to curb that, to make things better and more fair for everyone. Systemic racism in nature is policies set by an organization or society that certain people have an advantage and other people have a disadvantage or even harmful, and which is unfair. So that is pretty much definition of systemic racism. So I do appreciate you calling in, Mr. Smith. And that's some very, very valuable information that we all need to know. And if we could find a way, I think maybe some staff should have some culture classes or have some patient talks to some patient advocates about how do you feel about them? Am I approaching you better? How can I better understand you so you can understand what I'm trying to tell you, what you need to do as far as taking this medication or showing up here for this or that. So, is there anything else you would like to talk about, Mr. Smith?
No, I think we pretty much hit all the buttons, other than the fact that I am now presently on dialysis and I'm looking for a kidney, donor kidney. There has to be alive individuals.
A live donor. What is your blood type?
I'm sorry?
Your blood type?
Oh, my blood type is B positive.
B positive. So our listening audience, if there's anyone out there with B positive blood type and would like to make a difference, please call my phone number and I will put you in touch with the proper people to help Mr. Smith perhaps get a kidney. That is something that we will discuss extensively on this podcast, the myths about having live donors. We tend to be afraid of giving a kidney because we think something's going to happen to us or some bad karma. But the reality of it is you have 2 kidneys and you only use 1. And we need to get over that myth. There's a lot of people that are on dialysis that don't have to suffer those years of pain if somebody would be courageous enough to give them a kidney, if they deem that that person was worthy. So I will campaign for you, Mr. Smith. Be positive. And you're out of Silver Springs, Maryland. So perhaps someone's out there listening and they want to donate a kidney and they have to be positive, but the other person doesn't have to be positive, and maybe some swapping can be done. But this is Mr. Greg Smith, and he lives in Silver Springs, Maryland. And thank you for coming on the podcast, Mr. Smith. I wish you the best of luck. And thank you for your honesty and being candid about your personal experience and how you feel. Thanks again. Take care. Now we have a lady from Bowie, Maryland. And she is calling, her name is Kim, and she's calling regarding systemic racism in the United States, her views and her opinions, and what she's learned about systemic racism. So we're going to put her on the line in a few minutes, or a few seconds, and we'll get her intake on how she feels about systemic racism within the renal society here. So we have now Kim. Hi, Kim. She's from Bowie, Maryland. Welcome to the DK Love, Life, and Live podcast show in Chicago. How are you today, Kim?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Kim, can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good. Thanks for calling in, giving your opinion about systemic racism, our topic today. So you're actually on the mic now. Whatever you would like to say, please give us your opinion. And
I think it's very good that you're discussing it because it's one of those things that's always there, but it doesn't always get brought to light. I know people talk about racism in general, but they always think about it as a one-on-one type of racism. But until we talk about systemic racism, it's never really going to be gone. Because systemic racism is built into the way things are done, and even if a specific person is not doing racist things, if the systemic racism isn't addressed, we're still going to have inequity and different impacts for different people. And certain people will still be at a disadvantage even if the people on the very front line don't support racism. They still can benefit from it, and it still continues as long as we don't do something to change it at the top level where it comes from. So I love that you're doing this topic because so many people just don't understand that.
okay. Well said. Well said. This is a very important subject matter to talk about, especially in the current times. Are you currently on dialysis or know anyone who is that maybe has expressed your feelings?
I do. I have friends and relatives, some who have had in the past and already had their transplant, and others who are still dialysis now. One friend switched to home dialysis because of the experience of having to go to the center and deal with so many things. So,
Was those things that your friend was dealing with? Did he feel they were based on his race? Is the reason he went to home dialysis?
Yes, because some of the centers are in more urban neighborhoods, and the hospitals are not all created equal. If you're in a certain neighborhood, your hospital might be overcrowded, it might be understaffed, and that does affect the experience that you have because your nurses and doctors and techs are overloaded and you're not necessarily
So,
and to affect people of color more heavily.
so what do you think the difference is between getting dialysis treatment at a hospital in a more better neighborhood as opposed to one that's not in a neighborhood? Not in a well-off neighborhood. Do you see a difference there? I mean, it's the people that are helping the patients. So how is there a difference between going to a dialysis center, say, in a more well-off neighborhood as opposed to a poorer neighborhood? It's still about the people, correct?
Right, but it's different if you're able to go to a shiny youth center where they have fewer people than if you have to go to the one that everybody is kind of happening to, and so it's huge difference.
Okay.
And it depends on like it depends who you are and where you are.
Okay.
The same way it works with schools. The same way other types of systemic racism work. I think it's the same with healthcare and medical care.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that some schools in the city or in the poor or urban neighborhoods might be overpacked with teachers or overworked. Where if you go to a school in a rich neighborhood, the schools are a whole world apart. It's the same with medical facilities.
In your opinion, out of all the different things that's happened this year, I've always said the one thing that the good news out of this is systemic racism has been brought up to social media. So in your opinion, what are some things we could do? I mean, we've recognized it, and that's great, and we're talking about it on platforms throughout the country. What can we do to curb that? Talking about it does not affect change. We have to have a change in this so things can get better. Do you have any ideas or some suggestions that we could do? If it's from talking to your senator about changing policies, or your local congressman or alderman if you live in an urban city, is there anything that you want to say that may affect an effective change?
Definitely. Well, the first step is awareness, so that is where it's helpful if you share information on whatever platform you have, whether it's a social media account that you have, or just tell people in your immediate circle, like what you're doing today, how you bring it up, and people are talking about it and thinking about it. So first, you raise awareness however you can, and then once you do that, you should also stay on top of your senators and House representatives, just like you mentioned, because people seem to be thinking that because we put them in office, we did our part. Everybody feels proud when they voted in the election, which is good. You should be proud. But once these people are elected, just like you would on any job, you need to be checking on what they're doing and not doing. And when there are laws that affect your rights, you need to know what your legislators are doing about it. There are people in Congress that don't even show up for votes. And if there's a vote like something like what you mentioned earlier about HR 5534, I read about that on your Facebook page. If there's a vote that affects something that affects your rights, you need to know how your people that you elected are handling it. And you need to put pressure on them. As a citizen, if you have the right to call them, you should go to their office and schedule an appointment. People don't know you especially your Congress people. You don't just have to put them in office and let them decide to do what they want to do. See what they're voting on. See what kind of bills they're introducing. See what they're supporting and not supporting, and give them pressure. Just like you did during the election, they were willing to talk to you then. So now that the election's over, they should be still talking to you. And if you have questions, you need to ask. If you stay on top of the law, you see a law that's not right, push them to do what they're supposed to do and make a change.
think what you just said is awesome. Yeah, what you just said is pretty good. I think if you have a problem with any aspect of pre-transplant, post-transplant, while you're on dialysis, post it. Let the post it and let people know that this is a concern to you. And if it gets enough social media attention, that may affect some effective change. So I think that's a great idea to post your feelings about this battle we're facing with kidney disease. And if something's not right there, speak up, because maybe other people are afraid to speak up because they're so lost and don't know where they're at in the situation. They're depending on just someone saying them, and they can't really understand or feel what they're saying. So if you speak up, you probably speak up for a lot of other people as well. So.
Yes, a lot of other movements actually took off because of social media pressure. So if you look at Me Too, that started as a hashtag and became a movement, and so did things like Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
So don't underestimate the power of just making noise. Even if you think I'm just one person, it starts with one person and it can go viral and actually know you're making changes. So never hesitate to open your mouth and say something.
All right, yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so very much, Kim, for calling in from Bowie, Maryland, which is in Prince George's County.
And putting information out there, I think that's really important.
Well, thank you, and thank you for following. I appreciate that. So, if there's nothing else you want to say, thanks again, and hopefully we'll hear from you in the future if you have anything you want to say on the show. Thank you. All right. You too. Well, that was our two guests today talking about systemic racism and what their experiences were. It's come to light, and maybe some things we could do to help curb that. I want to send a special shout out, thank you, to my staff, Devon, Mr. Tyler Milsap, Sierra Milsap, Jasmine Milsap, and I want to thank Charlotte Powell for helping me produce this show. I also want to give a special thanks to Jackie Lofton. She has watched the podcast, and she put a kidney fund together for her birthday to donate to a kidney fund to help people on kidney dialysis. So if you're listening or looking, Jackie, thank you so very much. I'm glad that you had the heart in you to do that. So until next time, we meet and talk. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I look forward to talking to you about other kidney situations in the future. Our next episode, we will be talking to family members of kidney dialysis patients, what their feelings are, how they help their loved ones, and what are some things that people can do to make the situation better. So, on that note, I want to say goodbye, and hopefully you got the oils of wisdom today from our good lamp here. Take care.